Indy's back for one last adventure, and the fate of the world hangs in the balance. At the start of the story, we are shown the year 1944. There is a major war happening, and the German army is involved. They had taken a man whose face had been covered by cloth. The man's friend continues to stare at him, wondering where the army is taking his friend. Eventually, the cloth is removed from the man's face, revealing that he is Indiana Jones. It turns out that the Nazis were actually stealing many valuable old items from this location following the war. They had found such things in the same place that are not found anywhere in the world. Indiana had also come here in search of a special knife. Now a Nazi's friend, whose name is Waller, sees him and puts him in his bag. At that moment, a strong explosion occurred, and Indiana managed to escape and leave the area. He found a car and sat inside it. 2 Nazi soldiers arrived and joined him in the car. He felt that his driver was sitting in front. That's why Indiana doesn't say anything and just keeps driving. But halfway through, the Nazi army found out that it was Indiana who was running away from them. Now, when they found out, Indiana had jumped out of the moving car. After killing some soldiers, he boards a train, where it is shown that all the Nazi soldiers were stealing antiques from the same location. He reaches the train box where that precious knife was. But when he looks at it, he finds out that it is not real, it was fake. This was already known to his Nazi comrade Waller. That is the reason why he intentionally left it in that location. Waller had a scientist-made machine that was very costly here. Because of this, he could also time travel. Now all these things were also given to Waller by Indiana's friend, whom he had caught. Indiana has a lot of antiques and precious things. Then he comes from there and sits in another box so that no Nazi soldier can recognize him. Indiana also sees his friend sitting in a chair, who is tied up. He frees his friend and brings him along. In the next scene, Indiana encounters Waller, who has a gadget. He punches him and takes the device, which could also time travel. Then they both ran on this train because they could have been caught in the train. But the Nazis wanted to catch them anyway. That's why they blasted a bomb in front of that train. When Indiana saw this, he entered the canal with his friend. That's the reason both of them were rescued. However, they have now discovered that the Nazis did not actually attack the train with a bomb. Actually, this was the work of the Americans. Now that time travel device was also in their possession. That is, Indiana could not get that device. Now the story comes from 1969. In 1969, Indiana Jones grew up. We are introduced to the college where he worked as a professor, sharing stories about historical events. He asks a question to all his students. All the students gave the wrong answer to his question. Here was a girl named Helena, who gave the right answer to all the questions about Indiana. Hearing this, he was very happy. He shares the name of a scientist with everyone and mentions that this scientist has created numerous things, including weapons and various devices that can also time travel. Anyway, Indiana has left college now. Helena was also behind them. And behind Helena, a CIA agent, are a lot of goons in a hotel. There was also an American agent among them. There is also a Waller there, whom we saw at the beginning of the story, who wanted to steal antique things. This person from America used to be employed by Waller. In fact, Waller kept his true identity a secret from everyone, by falsely claiming he was a Nazi. He used to work here with NASA. The scene shifts to Helena and Indiana. Helena tells Indiana that I am studying archaeology. That is, I am very fond of knowing many things about history. I have read a lot about many things. In addition, she mentions the same gadget in this conversation, which happens to be a device for time travel. Helena explains that I now have to locate that particular device, specifically the dial. Upon hearing this, Indiana feels somewhat let down. They now take Helena with them to the library of the same college, where they used to study. They take out their device and show it to Helena. Because until now, Indiana had kept it safe with them. This is half of it. Half of it was broken by that scientist when he made it. Because that scientist knew that it could also be used for wrong things. And sometimes it will also go into the wrong hands. Then some people came there who were CIA agents. They also had the same CIA agent, whom we saw following Helena. It was discovered that Indiana possesses a time travel device. They were fired upon, and as a result, Helena escaped with the device. Indiana was apprehended and confined in a van. I asked her, "Tell me, where is that device?" Then her van stopped ahead. There was a lot of rushing ahead. Because today Neil Armstrong was about to take his first step on the moon. That's why his van stopped. Now, all of them choose to travel through Indiana on foot. However, Indiana tricked them and escaped from this place. They then find a horse to ride. Subsequently, they arrive, sit on the train, and depart from this location. In the future, they meet their friends. She had come to see her friend. Her friends tell her that Helena is a thief. She steals antiques and rare things and sells them on the market. And she has also spent a lot of time in jail. Hearing all this, Indiana says that I will have to find her. Because she has an expensive dial device. Now Indiana's pals handle all the planning on her behalf. She had a false passport produced as well. Friends of Indiana gave her their hat, which was ancient. They say that I remember every adventure I had with you. The next day, when Indiana reached a hotel looking for her, Helena was auctioning that dial. When they go ahead to stop her, Helena's assistant stops them. Which was also her friend. They continue walking while gesturing with their hands. At that moment, Indiana also notices Waller. He had known before that she was a member of the Nazi party. This was because he had a clear memory of everything. He looks at her and says, "Helena, you can't auction this dial." Then a fight broke out there. Everyone was behind that device. Finally, that device came into Helena's hands. She throws it towards her assistant. Then Waller takes that device from her hand and takes it away. Helena and Indiana both came out running. However, Waller had already left the place by that time. Indiana hails an auto rickshaw and goes after them. However, they had already departed. Waller is shown. To whom the CIA agent was saying that, "You know, because of you, I don't know how many innocent people lost their lives." That is the state that precedes Indiana. All the CIA personnel who were lying were with Waller. Waller kills that agent. And says that I am a Nazi. I was a Nazi, and I will always be a Nazi. That is, until now, he was living here by hiding his real identity. On the other hand, Indiana goes to his friend, who has a ship. Who is a sailor. He tells him, "Look, I have to go into the sea. I need your help with this." Helena and her assistant were with him. Helena then asks Indiana throughout the dialogue, "If you get a chance to go back in time, then what will you do first?" He says that if I get a chance, then first I will save my son, who died in an accident. After saying this, he dejectedly departs. He begins his voyage into the sea the following day. He needed to track down the Nazi ship, which had been sunk and destroyed. There were many coffins lying there, that belonged to those who had drowned in the ship and died. Then a whalefish came to them. Indiana drives him away from there. On that ship, he discovers a box, which he takes and uses to begin rising. Up in Indiana's ship, the men of the whaler had captured it. As soon as they came up with that box, they took it. There was a big stone on which something strange was written. Now he tells Helena to fall on that stone because she is an archaeologist. Here she plays her trick, and by telling her everything wrong, she makes a bomb blast. And now, taking advantage of this, Indiana, Helena, and her assistant go to another ship. Indiana had also taken that stone with him. When he sees that the stone is very heavy, he starts a fire in it. Perhaps there must be something inside it, he reasoned. When he sets it on fire, a gold shield comes out of it, on which it is actually written that the other part of the dial is. He also finds out about a place where that scientist was buried. Who created the time machine. That was where the second piece was located. The three of them now travel to the location where Helena's aide was kidnapped. Indiana was worried about her. He also tries to follow them but can't catch them. On the way, Helena tells Indiana that her assistant is very clever. "You don't worry about him. He knows how to get out of trouble." Now, when these two reach the cave, there are already the men from the boiler there. Cereal gas was left in that cave. Indiana goes a little ahead. The way to go ahead was written on the gold shield they had. Now moving forward, they find themselves in a flowing river in the cave, which they cross from the bridge. There were also the men in the boiler behind them. Indiana and Helena proceed to the scientist's graveyard. He was completely skeletonized when they removed the stone. There they also found the other part of the same device, which made Indiana very happy. Helena looks at the pictures taken there, which were of today's time. There were pictures of an airplane and a clock made there, which surprised her a lot. Because she was thinking, how would anyone know about these things at that time? She also looks at the clock made on the same scientist's skeleton, which was of the coming time. She looks at it and says that this is quite surprising. They have tied a clock, but the technology is not even here yet. Helena is aware that the scientists are playing with time in this situation. They're familiar with time travel. Then Indiana also hears this, and says that all these things are true. Then the boiler comes there, which says that the scientist was never wrong. Time travel is possible. Now he takes the other part of that device from them. And at the same time, the scientist who tied the clock to his hand keeps it on the device. Thus, it began to function. Also brought in is Helena's helper, who starts attacking the boiler. That's when the bullets started firing. In this case, Indiana was also injured. He tells Helena, "Look, you go, your life may be in danger." Helena and the assistant are now here. The boiler and his men took Indiana with them. They were all going to the airport. On the way, the boiler tells Indiana that I have found a place where I can travel in time. Now I have a device too. I have no fears whatsoever. Helena, on the other hand, was tagging along with her helper. She was watching him secretly. She shows her assistant a plane. She says, "Look at it. Will you drive it?" He says yes, and I will try. Now Helena gets on the boiler's plane with the help of a bike. His assistant was also coming back with the plane. The boiler had found the place where he could travel in time. We see that there is a bright light in the sky, and the ship goes into the light. Helena's assistant's plane was also behind. That is, all of them traveled in time and came back in time. Due to the fact that there was a conflict in progress when they took off, their plane became uncontrollable. And there was devastation everywhere. Helena tries to stop that plane, but it is out of control. That's why Helena also hangs from the plane. Indiana comes and saves him. But just then, both had fallen down. So his parachute opens, and both are saved. There we also see those scientists, who made this time travel machine. They were still sitting and completing it. In other words, this time I was late. The time machine wasn't created at that time. They can now see that boiler containing plane, which was also plummeting. That plane had completely fallen and been destroyed. Here, the scientists come and remove the clock from the boiler's hand, which they had tied up. That is what we saw in the present, in the hand of their tailor. Now Indiana tells Helena here. All this was the plan of the scientist. He had set his dial in such a way that, if someone used that dial in the future, he would reach the same place where he used to stay. And look, that is what happened. I want to stay here forever now. I simply want to live out my days here. The scientists approached him at that point. They gave the clock and the dial to Indiana. They tell him to take it with him in his time. Indiana says no. I don't want to go anywhere from here now. That's what Helena says. You have come here by way of time travel. If you stay here, problems could arise for us. That's why you have to come with me. That's when she hits Indiana with a hard punch in the face, which makes her unconscious. When it comes to his senses, he is in his own world. That is, in his time. Present now. The same clock and time machine that he had used to travel back 2,000 years in time were lying next to him in the present. That's where Helena comes and says, "I know you are alone." That's when she calls her wife, who had left her before. They were all very happy. And with this, the story of this movie also ends here. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care, and bye now.